個人會入嚟啊！陣間我孫耀東教授入嚟，所以冇攝住你哋。俾條山路啊，教授有一日。
I need to be on the side.
Yeah. Thank you. So the left hand side.
Left hand side.
OK， 你嘅右手邊。
好。
Thank you。
So,
on the left hand side.
Okay, here it is.
Okay. In the middle?
Middle one. Camera, please.
Okay, this way.
When do we get to take a picture of you guys?
Sure, please. Please. Still have one.
好。
仲有冇記者朋友未影到嘅？
呢度啊。
OK。
呢度。
我睇住先啊。後邊電話。有啊，好多陣啊。
仲有冇？仲有冇未齊？仲有冇未齊？OK。講多次個流程啊！我哋轉頭咧，主要會用廣東話發言嘅，整個首先會由我婚姻平權協會嘅代表去講翻我哋婚姻平權協會點樣睇今次嘅判決。之後我哋會交俾一對香港嘅 couples Travis 去講翻，用一個同性伴侶嘅身份點樣睇今次嘅判決。之後會由大律師阿珊去講翻，由法律嘅層面嚟講點樣睇今次香港判決對香港未來嘅影響。最後會由孫耀東教授用一個比較學術嘅角度去分析，其實香港現行社會點樣睇今次點樣睇同性嘅伴侶嘅關係同埋同性嘅婚姻。最後會有 Q&A section。So mainly the press con will conduct in Cantonese, but in the key point we will have some English support. So mainly in the first, I represented the Hong Kong marriage equality. We'll talk how marriage equality see this judgment, and then we will pass to a local couples, Travis, to say how the local couples see this judgment, and then we will pass to our lawyer Asan to say in a legal perspective how to see this judgment and how this will impact the Hong Kong legal system. And then the last but not least, we will have a Sun Yu Tong professor to have a more academic level to see how the Hong Kong society did they accept the same-sex marriage and how they see the same-sex couple in Hong Kong. And then we will have the Q&A section. 好，今日記者會正式開始。我係婚姻平權協會嘅代表，我叫 Esther。就終審法院，OK。
另外後面會唔會搭咗人？可唔可以？我哋
翻嗰邊後啲。OK ready。邊個咪？你講。OK 好。好，今日記者會正式開始。我係婚姻平權協會嘅代表，我嘅 Esther。終審法院今日就香港同性伴侶嘅法律地位作出咗一個非常重大嘅判決，對香港整體社會嚟講，呢一個都係一個重要嘅勝利。判決明確指出，香港法律必須要尊重同埋保障香港嘅同性伴侶，而判決並不會對任何人構成損害。佢其實係標誌住香港社會為平等嘅愛同埋一個更和諧嘅社會邁進咗一大步。So now we will talk in the English version. I'm Esther from Hong Kong Marriage Equality. Today, the Court of the Final Appeal made a landmark decision regarding the legal status of same-sex partnership in Hong Kong. It is a significant victory which makes clear that Hong Kong law must afford due respect and protection to same-sex couples. This will help families while hurting no one. Also, it makes another important step toward equal love and more harmonious society for all. 我跟住落嚟會將時間交翻俾我哋另一對 couples Travis 去講翻一對 local couples 點樣睇今次嘅判決嘅。
Hey, hello。咁首先都好高興啦，今日聽到個消息啦。我自己本身係一個土生土長嘅香港人，咁我本身同我嘅伴侶一齊都已經7年㗎啦。其實之前都可能會係有諗過係話，咦，其實我哋嘅將來會點樣咧？咁直至到今日個裁決出咗嚟嘅時候，我哋會有一刻開始好認真地諗啊，其實原來我哋可以長遠地留喺香港㗎喎。留喺香港對於我哋同性嘅關係，喺未來嗰條路嚟講，可能會係有更進一步嘅有啲嘅保障啊，同埋受到更加多嘅尊重咁樣咯。咁所以呢樣嘢係絕對係值得開心或者係鼓舞嘅一日啦。係 ，thank you。
Okay. Well, I'd please ask you to give me some leeway because we only just received the judgment. It's more than 100 pages long. I think the first thing to say is that this is a significant judgment. It will have serious and long-term impacts on the recognition and treatment of same-sex couples here in Hong Kong and those who are coming from abroad. It may be a very difficult judgment to understand, but at its heart what has happened is the court has said that the government, by failing to provide a status similar to but not mirroring marriage, means that the government has breached the law. But the government is given 2 years to rectify this before the court will say that they are in breach of the law. Now, it's important to understand that this is not the court saying that there should be full marriage equivalent to what's available for heterosexual couples. But what the court is saying is that the government has 2 years to think about an appropriate status that will give, in substance, the correct protection owed to families of same-sex couples. Now, how did the court achieve this? The court achieved this by recognizing that all people have a private sphere. They have the right to have family, and they have the right to have relationships with other people. This relationship in heterosexual couples is largely protected by marriage. But same-sex couples, because of the law in Hong Kong, are not entitled to get marriage. But their relationships, their families still need protection. So the court is saying there should be something similar to, but not the same as marriage, that provides them with a status that will give them protection. In doing so, the court is giving the government a wide margin of discretion. The government will have to think about how this should be affected, whether it should be exactly the same as marriage or there should be exceptions where a deviation from equal treatment is justified. Now, I think you may ask, what is the relationship between this judgment and all of the judgments we've had for the last few years, following from the QT decision and the Leung Chun Kwong decision from 2015? The difference is that before, every time there was an inequality, a discrimination, an individual couple would have to come forward and go to the court and ask for equal treatment. And every time the government would have the opportunity to provide some justification. So far, the government has not been able to provide any justification for unequal treatment. Instead of this piece-by-piece approach, the court is now saying not only in substance should there be equal treatment, but there should also be a status that will allow, generally speaking, for couples to receive equal treatment in relation to what the court called core rights. Now, you may also ask, what's the purpose of this 2 years and what the parties will do now? The court has given both the government and the appellant 3 weeks to make submissions on the specific declaration and the remedy that the court should give. This is an opportunity for both of the parties to consider this distinction of core rights which should be included. We hope that during that time the government and the appellant will review the judgment and think hard and long about what are core rights. I'll wait to answer questions after my colleagues have spoken.
好，跟住大家頭先講得咁快，我就可能會講得好耐啊，始終都係一個教授咁。咁首先就多謝咁多位媒體去出席今日嘅呢一個俾我哋去講一講呢一個案件其實係有啲咩意義啦。咁我首先介紹一下自己啦，我係孫耀東啦，我係性別研究課程香港中文大學性別研究課程嘅副教授嚟嘅。咁我喺中大亦都成立咗一個叫做性小眾研究計劃啦。咁所以其實我頭先啱啱就喺度諗緊，我都喺過去嗰15年裏邊咧，就喺無論英國啦，喺我翻嚟香港之前啦，同埋翻咗嚟香港都有11年嘅時間。咁佢做咗好多關於喺香港性小眾嘅研究啦，亦都包括好多喺香港類似呢一類喺本地冇承認同性關係嘅地方，佢哋裏邊會遇到啲咩問題咧？所以我今日會形容今日呢一個判決咧，係一個對於無論香港啦，又或者亞洲嘅LGBT 平權咧，都係一個好重要嘅一步嚟嘅。 咁我首先就有第一樣嘢想講就係都要講翻有一個失望咧，就係始終咧嗰個法院咧都係冇承認到同性婚姻嘅。咁呢一樣嘢嘅意思咧就係話其實婚姻始終係作為一個社會上面嘅制度咧，依然係一個好重要嘅，無論係喺嗰個象徵意義上面啦，又或者喺實質上面咧，其實都為社會上面嘅伴侶去提供好多嘅一啲重要嘅為佢哋提供好多好重要嘅，無論係呢一個象徵性啦，又或者實質嘅一啲影響嘅。咁但係咧，我亦都會覺得今日政府今日呢個法院咧去判決政府應該需要為同性伴侶嘅關係承認咧有一個替代框架咧，其實係一樣好重要嘅一樣嘢嚟嘅。因為根據我哋以往唔同嘅研究咧，都發現當同性伴侶冇得到社會上面嘅法律承認嗰陣咧，其實會面對好多嘅問題嘅。咁正如以往嘅一啲另外嘅司法覆核嘅案件咧，其實都已經揭示得到，無論係話喺嗰個伴侶能唔能夠帶到個伴侶嚟香港啦，又或者係一啲譬如一齊去報稅啊，呢一啲咁實質，可能係一啲異性伴侶會覺得係一個好理所當然去做得到嘅嘢咧。但係對於同性伴侶嚟講咧，呢一啲權利都係一個好大嘅問題嚟嘅。其實平機會之前咧有一個研究咧係講話，其實同性伴侶同埋異性伴侶咧喺社會上面係有大概超過100個法律嘅領域裏邊咧係有遭受到不同嘅對待。咁今日咧香港政府香港嘅法院咧，終於係一個咁明確地講得到，應該要有一個替代框架去為同性伴侶嘅法律承認咧，去有呢一步去邁出。咁但係正如頭先律師都有講咧，當中其實依然嗰個替代框架嘅內容係啲咩咧？又或者當中乜嘢叫做一啲核心嘅權利咧？呢啲依然都係好唔清楚。咁我估陣間大家都可能會再問得到啦。咁但係我仲有2點想去講嘅咧，就係話咁大家就會可能諗得到咁而家呢件事喺香港社會裏邊發生會係一件咩嘅一件事咧？咁我會有2點想去講嘅咧。第一個咧就係其實呢一件事喺香港去發生咧，其實同香港社會整體上面對 LGBT 嘅睇法咧，其實係一致嘅。因為咧過去嗰10年咧，我哋曾經我同港大啦，同埋University of North Carolina Chapel Hill， 即係美國嘅北卡羅來達立大學啦，即係一個中大、港大同埋UNC Chapel Hill 嘅合作咧。我哋曾經做過3次喺香港嘅具代表性嘅電話抽樣調查啦，每一次都係超過1000人嘅。其實見得到香港市民咧對於 LGBT 權利嘅支持度咧係越嚟越上升嘅。以支唔支持同性婚姻為例啦，我哋喺2013年啦、2017年啦，同埋2023年咧，都係用同一條嘅問題去問過香港市民支唔支持同性婚姻啦。2013年咧嗰個支持嘅百分比咧係38%啦，2017年咧去到50%，而去到2023年咧嗰個數字係去到60%嘅。所以其實都係一個好短嘅時間，講緊10年裏邊有個22%嘅百分點嘅呢一個嘅升幅咧，其實係就住唔同嘅議題嚟講，都係好高嘅一個升幅嚟嘅。而其實呢一個講緊香港裏邊有60%嘅市民去支持同性婚姻咧。如果我哋比較喺亞洲嚟講咧，其實喺亞洲唔同嘅地區，如果講話有民調嚟計咧，其實香港同台灣咧係2個最高嘅司法管轄區，係就住市民對同性婚姻有個咁高嘅支持度嘅。咁另外一個好快想講嘅就係話，其實我覺得喺香港嘅呢個發展咧，亦都同喺亞洲另外有一啲地區嘅發展咧，其實都係幾行緊同一個軌跡嘅。因為其實亞洲地區不嬲，大家嚟講可能會覺得係文化上面、社會上會比較保守一啲啦。但係大家都會記得係台灣係喺2019年成為咗第一個司法管轄區去承認同性婚姻啦。而其實今年咧都可以話有另一個比較令人詫異嘅就係尼泊爾，其實個法院亦都係判決咗係話嗌當地嘅政府去需要去諗呢個承認同性伴侶婚姻嘅制度。而其實另外仲有一啲地區，譬如係日本啊、泰國啊，其實近嚟都有好多嘅討論嘅。咁所以我覺得其實呢一個嘅判決，大家都可能會問一個問題，同香港嘅社會啊、文化其實係點樣去理解咧？但係其實我覺得係大家都唔可以低估咗，其實香港嘅社會一路都越嚟越係就住 LGBT 議題嘅市民嘅接受嘅程度，其實都越嚟越高嘅。咁我暫時係講到呢度先，陣間仲有機會再同大家傾。唔該。
會有 Q&A 嘅時間啦，我哋稍等一陣，我哋請翻頭先有份講過嘅朋友出嚟。
I'll just bring my copy of the judgment.
咁跟住落嚟有 Q&A 嘅環節，麻煩舉手之後講一講大概係邊一間最後着法係請睇唔到係可以。
阿 K 寶㗎，想問下咧，其實根據嗰個裁決咧，2年內即係政府係要做啲乜嘢啦？即係以你哋認知，其實係一定要改法例，一定係即係透過行政手段已經做得到。咁其實政府會唔會有一啲走盞空間咧？即係到時 LGBT 群體會唔會都係要逐個權利去打咧？咁另外咧就想問下，其實有咩範疇透過裁決有機會便利得到？咁頭先有提到有100個係同異性級別唔同啦，可能有邊啲係可能有機會同佢哋一致化嘅？咁例如即係領養子女咁樣樣，可唔可以咧？
It's actually pretty legal, so I think it's actually more to you.
Well, can somebody? I'm so sorry. My Chinese is terrible. What is the question?
Simply to ask, would it be illegal within that 2 years? What could be done in these 2 years?
Yeah. So.
You need to step.
Yeah, no problem. That is a very good question, and in a way, that is something that the court will no doubt address in 3 weeks after there are written submissions from the parties. But I think you must look at it this way. Already we have 2 judgments from the Court of Final Appeal in QT and Leung Chun Kwong, where the Court of Final Appeal said that there should not be discriminatory treatment against same-sex couples where there is no justification. Most of that justification today has disappeared, because we know that simply saying that there's only status provided to heterosexual couples is wrong, because the court is saying there should also be status for same-sex couples. So I expect that those things which are already illegal and unlawful, that is to say discrimination against same-sex couples, that will still be unlawful. And really it is for the various government agencies and the Department of Justice to think about how it will deal with all of the existing cases and complaints about discrimination. I mean, we know already, I can think of 4 or 5 cases in front of the High Court or Court of Appeal where there are complaints about discrimination, and the government has already lost those cases. They should reconsider their approach to those cases and start taking a more proactive approach. This is one important aspect of the judgment. The Court of Final Appeal is saying there's a positive obligation on the government to protect the status of same-sex couples and their equal treatment in across really those necessary areas to protect their relationships and families. Good luck.
仲有冇？係後邊請。
So 2 questions coming from SCMP. Sorry, I just have to shout out the question.
Yes, please.
Or you can't see my face. So the judgment explicitly make examples of legal frameworks such as civil partnerships. So how far away from the government declaration to actual policy change? And of course, it's still in the government's court to decide in the next 2 years. But in your legal perspective, how exactly will the new legal recognition be carried out locally? Can some same-sex marriage couple transfer their foreign marriage status to civil partnership?
The court has given a wide discretion to the government about dealing with these kinds of problems. You are completely right to recognize that those are issues. They need to be dealt with. In our opinion, the government has a lot of very good examples to draw from, including the legislation in the United Kingdom dealing with this sort of change. In the United Kingdom, there were also cases saying that the absence of status was discrimination, and the government enacted actually more than one series of legislation to try to deal with these issues. The Hong Kong government has the benefit of seeing their trial and error and can take the benefit of that history. We are also at the advantage that Hong Kong law, a lot of it is based on English law. So the government really can take a proactive step and perhaps learn from what they've learned in the United Kingdom. Does that help?
Sure.
Two questions from CNA. The first one is, which are the priority areas where core rights are concerned under the legal framework? And the second one is, fundamentally same-sex marriage is still it's still not allowed in the Constitution. So are there plans to launch further changes?
So dealing with those two separately. First, about core rights. You may remember when the Court of Final Appeal was hearing this case, they adjourned overnight to allow Government Counsel to consider what core rights are. And there was a good deal of difficulty answering that question. And in the next 3 weeks, I expect this is exactly what the Government Counsel and Appellants Counsel will consider. I'm not sure I can really give you a definitive answer. Our view is that really it does no good to divvy up these rights, and really all of the rights ought to be given, because we cannot, even those areas which might not be considered core rights, ultimately they may be the subject of litigation. There are some examples given in the court's judgment. I'm not going to repeat them. And we can see from the cases that have already come before the court that it's very hard to justify discriminatory treatment. Now, the other question you asked was about whether or not there are other cases that may come forward. There are already, as I said, at least 5 cases that I can think of that are already before the courts, and there are several more that are in contemplation that we are aware of. And there was an Equal Opportunities Commission report several years ago detailing all the ways in which same-sex couples are treated in a discriminatory fashion. So you can see that even if the government launches a very tight scheme, very narrowly defining core rights, they may simply be delaying what is inevitable, which is a wider, more inclusive, positive scheme. Now, we don't want to say that there may not be circumstances or issues where there may need to be some nuance. But I think the point is, take a proactive approach, look at the benefit of the experience in other countries, and try to be inclusive rather than exclusive.
And may I just add to that? May I just add to that from a more social perspective? Is that I think that although obviously legally speaking there are definitions about what are core rights and what are not core rights, but in my research and also research with same-sex couples over the life course, actually what same-sex couples face in life are actually not that different from opposite-sex couples, especially if you think about the life course of a person from different stages. Especially in the past, I've also worked a lot with older LGBT plus people. When it comes to matters of 生老病死, right, like, from birth till the deathbed to the hospital, actually different sex couples and same-sex couples experience very similar issues, despite that with many more hurdles and challenges that they have to face. So I would argue very similarly like Asan, that the definition of rights should be inclusive rather than trying to draw on a very narrow list, which then would invite more debates in the future. 咁我好快地講少少，我覺得即係當究竟話應該同性伴侶應該要喺社會上面享有咩權利嘅時間，其實同性伴侶同異性伴侶講緊嘅其實都係一個人喺生老病死嘅階段，喺人生唔同嘅階段，尤其係以往我好多研究都有可能係接觸到一啲年長嘅 LGBT 嘅人士嘅時間，其實面對嘅議題都係好相近嘅議題。咁所以當如果政府同立法會去討論呢一啲權利，將佢劃得太窄嗰陣咧，其實都只係喺未來嗰陣咧會有越嚟越多嘅挑戰係會出嚟嘅啫。
係後邊。
想問下 Travis 咧，即係就住今次嘅判決，有冇打算同伴侶可能喺海外有一個結婚咧？同埋如果真係有呢個打算嘅話，翻落嚟香港，你哋最渴望得到咩嘅喺香港嘅一啲伴侶嘅權利或者福利咧？咁同埋想問下，即係其實個判詞入邊有提到香港係冇一個憲法權利去容讓同性婚姻啦，即係你哋覺得咁呢個可能同好多人本身嘅諗法有啲唔同嘅，咁佢都仍然係講緊即係異性婚姻同埋同性婚姻係有差異嘅，咁你哋覺得對嗰個性別平權有啲咩影響咧？
首先回應翻第一個問題啦。其實 before 呢個判決之前嘅話，真係有諗過喺海外會結婚嘅。 咁至於地方方面嘅話，其實就仲喺度考慮緊。咁但係結婚呢個決定就已經係幾乎係可以話係100%會係做㗎啦。咁正如頭先第一次出嚟嘅時候同大家講過啦，咁其實今日呢個判決係都幾喜出望外咧，令到我哋啦嚇，尤其是呢個族群。咁同埋無論係其實我會覺得無論喺外地或者將來如果有機會喺香港可以通過到呢個同性婚姻呢個合法化嘅時候，喺香港結婚嘅話，因為正如我頭先講過，我哋係一個土生土長嘅香港人，我哋希望無論係過往我哋由細到大嘅生活，或者將來好似頭先兩位有講過啦，如果我哋生老病死都可以係將我哋人生重要嘅 moment 喺香港呢個地方裏面係可以實行到嘅話，咁呢個我諗對於每一個香港人嚟講都應該係一件可喜可賀嘅事情啦。咁第二個問題就係話我覺得一啲實際嘅措施或者 policy， 我哋希望會係非常樂意見到咯。因為除咗生老病死呢個係一個好闊嘅一個議題啦。咁我不如舉個例子啦，譬如係話我哋工作上面可能有一啲嘅公司佢會有啲福利俾我哋嘅配偶，咁但係原來所謂嘅配偶只不過係異性戀結咗婚嘅配偶，咁點解我哋同性嘅配偶係唔可以享有嘅咧？咁第二啦就係話，如果我哋有啲咩事情發生嘅時候，咁我哋病咗，咁或者如果真係有是但一方不幸咁樣我哋離世嘅時候，咁其實我哋剩低落嚟嘅，譬如一啲嘅實際嘅，譬如一啲嘅事情要處理嘅時候，可能一啲嘅資產啊，或者係話可能我哋過咗身嘅時候一啲嘅決定權，咁其實會唔會係交翻俾我哋自己最親近嘅伴侶去決定會係比較好咧？咁呢一啲嘅議題其實講咗好多年，咁同埋點解即係好簡單嘅呢一啲嘢，我諗唔好分同性或者異性啦。其實大家將心比己咁去諗啦。如果呢一啲嘢發生喺各位身上嘅時候，你哋好直接就會覺得係話呢一啲嘢，如果我有伴侶，我有另一半嘅時候，我當然會係希望佢幫我處理啦。咁正如我哋都係一樣咁樣嘅諗法咁樣咯嚇。
想問下 Travis 嘅，想問下即係中院就話政府冇替代嘅框架俾法律去承認同性伴侶關係啦。咁你覺得有啲咩選項可以做到咧？同埋可以點樣完善翻而家嘅法律同埋制度咧？
哇！呢個好似係一個好深、一個好 deep 或者係一個好宏觀嘅一個議題啦。咁我諗，因為其實我自己本人，我只不過係一個香港嘅小市民。咁對呢個議題嚟講嘅話，我諗喺呢個 moment，我未必會一個好確切嘅答案俾到你，係啦。咁我諗提翻我頭先所講嘅嘢，我諗切身嘅問題，切身我自己諗到嘅就係話，我同我自己將來我嘅伴侶或者我哋雙方嘅家庭，其實有啲乜嘢嘅應該要享有嘅權利，或者有啲咩保障俾我哋咧？我諗係一個權利同埋保障比較緊要啲咯，係啦。
仲有冇咩提問？
唔好意思，啱啱有提即係想問即係佢話依家喺香港都未容許或者認可承認同性婚姻㗎嘛？即係你哋就仲要睇翻政府同埋立法會啦。咁你哋對於呢樣嘢，即係可能喺體制內嘅有政策倡議，或者體制外嘅爭取，其實樂唔樂觀咧？尤其是依家嘅時候。
你係想問 Travis？
想問教授或者你。
頭先就諗住唔係問我，跟住有啲好似啲學生咁樣冇聽書添。體制內同埋體制外，我覺得係坦白講係會有挑戰嘅。咁我覺得即係無可否認嘅係近年嘅社會氣氛係可以話唔同嘅。就住唔同社會議題嘅有啲嘅討論都係少過以前嘅，咁但係我亦都正如頭先所講啦，我又覺得就住即係今日我哋講緊呢個議題係話應唔應該去社會應唔應該去承認同性伴侶嘅權利咧？我又覺得相對上係比起其他議題係話可以係多一啲希望嘅，因為頭先嗰個數字都講緊其實10年間有22個百分點嘅增長啦。其實另外一個數字爭啲唔記得講添，就係18至34歲嘅我哋嘅受訪者當中咧係有 82%嘅受訪者喺嗰一個年紀嘅係支持同性伴侶嘅權利獲得承認嘅。咁我覺得其實都好明顯嘅一個世代嘅轉變啦。咁亦都即係呢一個世代轉變其實亦都唔係話太令人詫異嘅，因為其實近年亦都見到越嚟越多媒體嘅報導啊，越嚟越多LGBT 朋友去出櫃啊。咁其實令到個社會嘅支持度亦都會有個改變。咁所以係話即係當然會覺得近年嘅所有嘅社會氣氛有改變，會有一個影響啦。但係我覺得其實喺18至34歲嘅受訪者當中有82%嘅人係支持，其實都代表住社會上面嘅支持嘅聲音其實亦都冇想像中係咁少咯。
或者我補充翻少少，其實社會上支持同性婚姻嘅聲音係比我哋認知裏邊遠為高。我哋香港婚姻平權協會早前都做咗個質化研究，其實就訪問咗唔同嘅香港人啦，分別有唔同嘅年齡層，咁有叫18、22比較年輕啲嘅，甚至係我哋叫中年啲或者老年啲。其實當中我哋得到嘅回應都非常之正面，大家原來比我哋想象中係更加接受同性婚姻。譬如佢哋話，我哋上網其實睇到好多 YouTuber 拍緊一啲片講緊佢哋育兒好開心啊，其實佢哋同一般嘅家庭係無異，甚至亦都有啲人會覺得其實都有好多父母係願意支持自己嘅小朋友，即只要佢哋開心就好。我諗嗰個愛嗰件事其實係 support 到香港嘅社會好多唔同嘅人去接受呢件事，同埋如果當同性婚姻其實都係講緊核心係講緊愛嘅話，咁其實香港社會都冇理由唔接受呢樣嘢咯。
唔好意思，講開又想講添。
係
我仲有另一個數字好想講嘅咧，就係我哋喺嗰一啲嘅問卷調查裏邊咧，有問咗嗰啲香港嘅市民咧，係佢自己對於同性戀嘅接受程度啦，同埋佢覺得同性伴侶應唔應該係享有到唔同嘅權利嘅。咁我自己去睇嗰啲數字咧，就發覺有一個幾得意嘅觀察咧，就係當中咧都有幾多嘅市民係話，其實我自己未必接受同性戀㗎，但係我覺得 LGBT 人士或者同性伴侶應該喺社會上面享有權利。當中我覺得其中有一個幾大嘅諗法嘅改變，就可能係話，其實可能至少有當中幾大部分嘅市民就話，其實我哋講緊喺社會上面，我哋每一個人作為香港市民，其實應該得到啲咩權利？係唔係應該可以將一啲所謂個人嘅諗法去擺低，而係講緊話喺公眾領域裏邊，大家作為一個參與呢一個社會嘅人，係唔係都應該得到一啲社會上面嘅保障咧？咁我自己對於嗰一個好似好細嘅觀察，但係呢一個亦都係即係過去嗰10年我一路去睇住唔同嘅喺香港嘅 LGBT 議題嘅發展，我覺得係一個好唔同嘅轉變，由以前係對於 LGBT 群體一個好整體嘅大家有啲咩諗法，到咗而家講緊，其實佢同我都係。佢同你大家都係一個社會上面生活緊嘅人，其實大家會遇到啲咩問題？好似用咗一個幾唔同嘅框架去理解呢一件事。咁呢個對我嚟講係都一個幾我覺得係幾正面嘅一個社會諗法嘅改變咯。
仲有冇其他問題？
有個好簡單問題想問，即係 Jimmy 知咗個判決有冇乜嘢 feedback 或者感受啊
Does Jimmy know the decision and how he reacts to it?
Probably he has been told. This is something he would have been entitled to be told. But we are not in contact with Jimmy, and we can't say for sure. I do know that his lawyers know, including those who are not in Hong Kong. But I have no idea if he knows.
仲有冇咩其他問題？係。
咁即係對家都會即係。
唔好意思，有人問緊清。
咁對家即係有啲組織會反對，咁點樣應對呢啲反對嘅？
我諗我哋都要實際等翻啲組織有啲乜嘢反對嘅時候，我哋都要等翻實際。如果當其實我哋尊重唔同嘅聲音，我哋都理解香港社會係應當有唔同嘅聲音，而我哋信仰嘅價值其實都係尊重包容唔同嘅聲音。咁至於你頭先講到呢啲反對聲音，我哋點樣應對嘅時候，或者我哋都稍後等下睇下對方會有啲咩講嘅時候，我哋先再作回應。另外係咪仲有咩問題啊？請。
因為今次嘅判決咧都話有其他嘅替代方法去承認呢個同性嘅伴侶關係啦，都想問下教授會唔會即係其他國家有冇一啲類似嘅替代方法可以俾去承認呢個關係嘅俾香港參考？
So I can speak first and then see whether, like, in terms of the alternative forms to civil partnership, what forms and things like that. 即係當然其中一個所謂替代嘅方法就係即係呢個 civil partnership 或者 civil union， 即係民事結合呢一個方法啦。咁呢個其實個討論喺好多唔同嘅地方裏邊都曾經去進行嘅。即係如果冇呢個婚姻嘅時間，呢個民事結合嘅形式係點樣咧？咁當中我覺得即係從一個學術嘅角度去分析，就有兩個層面嘅。第一個就係法律嘅層面，又或者意義上面嘅層面。咁當中都有好多爭議嘅。咁法律嘅層面就係喺一啲國家裏邊啦，譬如喺英國啦，咁佢哋係有呢個民事結合嗰陣咧，好強調喺個法律裏邊係有寫明係話雖然呢個係民事結合。而唔係同性婚姻啦，但係唔可以係將呢兩樣嘢有差別對待嘅。咁所以呢個亦即係首先呢個層面就係喺法律上面，如果有呢個民事結合嗰陣，會唔會法律上面有意義唔同啦？咁但係另外一個咧，就係都會有好多嘅爭議喺好多唔同嘅地方裏邊都有曾經有出現過嘅，就係無論 LGBT 社群啦，又或者社會上面對呢一個替代框架民事結合嘅一個諗法上面啦。咁有一啲社會人士就會可能覺得有民事結合幾好啊，因為好似係即係喺個討論裏邊，始終社會上面對於婚姻都會覺得有好多無論宗教啊或者歷史上面嘅諗法。咁好似用民事結合咧，就可能會係有一啲社會上面嘅人士會有一啲嗰個反對意見啊，又或者個諗法相對上冇咁強嘅。咁但係亦都有一啲 LGBT 社群人士裏邊我哋見得到世界各地唔同，有時又會有個討論係話咁如果講緊平權嘅時間，咁點解要有一個另外嘅替代框架咧？咁所以其實當呢啲替代框架去出現嗰陣，好多時就會出現咗呢啲類型嘅一啲爭議。咁我覺得即係其實係都好正常嘅，喺每一個國家每一個地方裏邊嘅法律嘅發展裏邊當中遇到呢一啲問題，都係好可以去理解同埋會預見得到嘅。So see if you answer. Yeah.
There's a very good legal reason not to have two different tiers. The reason is like this. The government may come forward with an institution, whether they call it civil union or civil partnership, in an effort to offer something which is less than marriage. The trouble is, if they do that, then it may be that a heterosexual couple comes forward and says, why can a homosexual couple get something less than marriage, but I cannot get something less than marriage? In that case, the court will probably say, you should also be able to get this civil partnership. Now, the reason why this is a reason why there should be the same as it should be the same as marriage is because the government has all along said that they want to support marriage. They want to encourage more people to enter into marriages. But if they provide a second tier, they may actually dissuade people from getting married. So we strongly feel that it is in everyone's interest, the whole of Hong Kong society, for the civil partnership or civil union for same-sex couples to be in substance the same as marriage. Of course, the government may choose not to do that, but we will have to wait and see. Yeah.
And in fact, there was actually a court case in the
Yes.
UK that
Yes.
a different sex couple asked why
That's
I'm not
right.
entitled
Yeah,
to civil
as
partnership.
Professor says, is quite true that there have already been cases litigating whether or not a same-sex couple should opposite-sex couple should also be able to access the same level as civil union or civil partnership. And the courts in the UK have already accepted it would be discriminatory to offer it to one group of people but not the other, which is why, again, we think that these things should be the same in substance.
係，請。
Does the judgment means the government is obliged to have something to have same-sex marriage rights? And also, do you have anything in mind that might need legal protection for same-sex? Because a lot of previous cases, are there any areas are left unchallenged or unchanged that need to be changed in the future?
So your first question was
Is the government obliged?
yes, the government's obligation and then whether there are any leftover areas. I think for the public, they can understand it like this. Once the Court of Final Appeal gives the declaration, which they will give in 2 years' time, then the government have a positive obligation always to comply with the law. And in 2 years' time, they will tell the government that they are obliged to provide an alternative status. So in 2 years' time, the government will be obliged to provide an alternative status. Why I can say that is because Article 4 of the Hong Kong Basic Law requires the government proactively to protect and safeguard the rights of Hong Kong people. And if the Court of Final Appeal has said that those rights require this status for same-sex couples, then yes, the government must provide that status. Now, your second question is, are there any leftover areas left to be challenged? There are many, many, many areas. I mentioned earlier the EOC report that was issued several years ago listing out the areas. I should emphasize, even that report is not a complete report. There are existing cases, some judgments which will come out very soon, I think in the next few weeks, that deal with other areas, especially family and children rights. There are also 2 cases in front of the Court of Appeal dealing, as you know, with housing, public housing cases. There are other cases dealing with intestacy, succession, inheritance from family members. There are many other areas, and an area which we were discussing earlier is discrimination on the basis of family status. So the Court of Final Appeal is saying that same-sex couples should have a kind of family status. There is a family status discrimination ordinance. There are already couples who are facing discrimination because they are in relationships like this. It will become against the law for someone to discriminate against them in the near future. Of course, we don't want any of this to be subject to litigation. We prefer for the government to proactively try to take steps to correct the law.
Sorry, I keep on wanting to say things. Obviously, that's a professorial thing. I just want to add that also I want to add another perspective, because so far the discussion that we've been talking about is the impact on the same-sex couples themselves, which is obviously very important. But I also want to bring in the perspective that this judgment is also very important for Hong Kong society as a whole, for both businesses that want to bring talent to Hong Kong, as well as how Hong Kong positions itself as an inclusive society. Because I remember back in 2017 when the QT and SS case came out, then I've done a lot of interviews both before and QT and SS and after QT and SS, that a lot of same-sex couples, after the decision, they really tell me that when they get a job offer to come to Hong Kong, a very big thing is that they go online and see how Hong Kong is in terms of its recognition of LGBT plus rights. And I would imagine that this time with such an even more landmark decision, this is going to also mean a lot for businesses, a lot for Hong Kong in terms of attracting its talents. 咁我好想講嘅咧就係，雖然咧其實呢一個判決咧，我哋好自然會將佢擺咗喺同性伴侶身上面佢哋嘅福祉啦，但係其實對於香港社會整體嚟講咧，其實當有一個咁重要判決咧，其實對於無論商業世界啦，又或者香港整體嘅社會點樣喺全球裏邊去講話，其實自己嘅定位係點，都係一個好重要嘅指標嚟嘅。因為其實咧，全球其實而家已經有越嚟越多嘅國家係有去承認同性伴侶嘅權利啦。你可以想像，當一個商業嘅公司，當佢係可能要喺世界各地去請唔同嘅人才嚟香港嗰陣，真係好可能有一對同性伴侶會話，其實我喺當地已經有我嘅權利㗎咯，我嚟到香港唔會去放棄自己嘅權利。其實啱啱近嚟，我先至喺大學裏邊嘅另一個 department 聽到就係有一個咁嘅 case 出現。呢一啲嘅情況以前係可能覺得係一啲好理論化嘅情況嚟嘅，但係其實而家呢一啲嘅情況越嚟越實際。咁所以我覺得其實我哋除咗睇呢一個判決係話對於同性伴侶佢哋自己本身嘅福祉嚟講，其實無論講緊香港嘅商業運作啦，香港係點樣去同其他唔同嘅地區去競爭啦，喺全球裏邊嘅定位啦，呢一啲其實都係一個好重要嘅呢一個判決帶嚟嘅一啲影響咯。
Can I add? I think I would like Hong Kong people to understand the importance of this judgment is not only about what will happen in 2 years. Actually, the Court of Final Appeal talks a lot about different arguments that were raised by the government. And one very important feature of this judgment is talking about the right of Hong Kong people, all Hong Kong people, to protection of their privacy. The court has defined privacy in a much broader way than the government were defining it, and have also defined the government's obligations to protect everyone's privacy in a more proactive way. Hong Kong people may have some difficulty to understand what impact this will make, but I can tell you it has a broad, wide-ranging, and very deep impact on our lives. All of us can imagine some private sphere, something that defines us, something about how we treat or define ourselves, protecting our own dignity and who we are. The Court of Final Appeal has stated very clearly two things. One, that all of that is protected by the law, and two, that the Hong Kong government has a positive obligation to protect all of our privacy.
仲有冇其他提問？仲有冇其他提問？如果冇嘅話，需唔需要再影多一張合照？
可唔可以請 Travis 同另一邊一齊合照？
好嘛，好嘛，唔好意思。OK。可能麻煩影多張合照，有個 media 係啦。Thank you. We would like to take one more group photo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next to a sun shows how short I
Is it a good combination?
好，望一望呢邊啊。好，上邊啊，唔該。
咁多位呢度唔該。
望一望中間呢度。
影完到後面啊！
好，camera please。
望一望呢度啊，呢邊。
Oh, Travis, I'm covering you up.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
And look, thank you very much to all of you. I'm sorry the cramped space, the only what could be provided in the short time. Okay. Okay.
好，唔該晒記者朋友。
好，多謝晒咁多位。想問係咪全部人都已經有咗個 media statement？如果仲有冇人冇嘅？